And we are live. Hello, everyone. Hi, top shelfers. I hope that you're doing well today. We actually have a very special guest today. We have the author of The Chosen and the Beautiful, which is just a beautiful, beautiful book. And we are just so happy that she is here today. So thank you so much for joining. So if we could maybe just go around, do introductions, and then if you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Sure. My name's Nghi Vo. I wrote The Chosen and the Beautiful. I would hold up my copy of it, but it's currently propping up my webcam, so it's kind of where we are tonight.
Awesome.
Do you want me to go next?
Yeah, sure.
I'm Angela. My channel is Angela Rose Reads, and I read basically anything, but like anything like this. Give me more recommendations, please, because this is like my favorite type of writing ever. I'm just blown away by your wonderful words. So,
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, and I have a channel called Laura Reads Pages. I also like to read a bit of everything, and I really enjoyed The Chosen and the Beautiful, so I'm excited for our discussion today.
Stephanie.
My name is Stephanie. I am from Utah in the United States, and my channel is Stephanie's Bookverse, and I read mainly fantasy, but I do kind of branch out into a little bit of everything else too.
And my name is Sarah, and I just mostly read with my cat, who is actually here right now. This is Olivia, and we're pretty much inseparable, like 24 hours a day. As long as we're together, we're just like inseparable. So I do want to read a little bit of your bio, if that's all right. So Nghi Vo is the author of the novel The Chosen and the Beautiful, and the acclaimed novellas When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain and The Empress of Salt and Fortune, a Hugo Locus and Ignite Award finalist, and the winner of the Crawford Award. Born in Illinois, she now lives on the shores of Lake Michigan. She believes in the ritual of lipstick, the power of stories, and the right to change your mind. So I had a question at that time. Could you tell us a little bit more about the ritual of lipstick?
It is a line I stole with absolutely no guilt at all from Aaron McEwen's The Queer Gospel, actually. Which is a fantastic song. I heard it for the first time off of Welcome to Night Vale, I think, many years ago. And it is just this wonderful song that has always stuck with me. And it's, there's a certain amount of femme pride to it. There is a love of aesthetics. There's the fact that despite being someone who loves the idea of the transformative power of makeup, I found one tube of lipstick and I've stuck with it for the past 4 years. It's actually the same tube, so I should probably stop using it, but I'm not seeing myself doing that anytime soon.
what color is it?
It is Revlon's Black Cherry, actually.
Oh, that's a beautiful color.
Yeah, it's cream. It's and the thing is, I used to like go to gothing events, and there's no such thing if you're a goth. There's no such thing as a daytime or a nighttime look. It's all just plastered on. Go out,
That's true.
dance until you sweat it off.
That's very true. Is Laura? I hope that Laura is okay.
Sorry, I would still hear you the whole time. I just lost my camera for some reason, but I'm back now. So
perfect. So I would just like to also go over the summary of the book. So if one of you could read or say the summary, because I know that I think two of you have read it fairly recently. That'd be great.
I kind of want the author to. Would you mind?
Or you can give that summary.
I want to know from your perspective what you
of course.
Yes.
Okay, The Chosen and the Beautiful is a magical queer retelling of The Great Gatsby. Instead of being from the point of view of Nick Carraway, as The Great Gatsby is, it takes the point of view from another minor, quote-unquote, minor character named Jordan Baker. And who is a golfer, a integral part to how the story runs. And I've just taken all of that and I've added demons and deals with the devil and magic, and I've made Jordan incidentally queer and Asian American, because why wouldn't I while I'm at it? That's about it. I think that covers it.
Yes, absolutely. And if it's all right with you, I'd just like to sort of go into questions.
Sure.
So, one question that I have is, could you just tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write this novel at this time, like specifically? What
This
inspired you to write a Gatsby retelling?
Okay, that's a really funny question because I went to public school in the United States, so I was sort of given The Great Gatsby along with really terrible school meals and a weird obsession with American football. It's supposed to be the great American novel, and it's always struck me, and that's a question that I know a lot of people have been asking for a very long time, especially in the last few years. Whose America is it really? Who is really an American? And I'm not saying that The Great Gatsby tries to tell us this. In fact, it might actually try to tell us the opposite of, more of a cautionary tale than anything to aspire to. But starting from that, I mean, my fascination with The Great Gatsby started when I was very young. The first day we started reading the book, I nearly died in the school parking lot because I got nearly got sideswiped by a car. So that's it's very formative. That stuck with me. And so it was always in the back of my head, the idea that there are more stories than the one that is being told in Fitzgerald's work. And, I grew up, did a lot of stuff I didn't want to do, did a lot of stuff that I really enjoyed doing. And eventually, got myself a writing career and agent and all that fun stuff. And, the story was on my mind. It was, we're coming into the 20s, we're 100 years out, and the copyright's expiring. I had a lot of thoughts about that. And I was in the middle of writing another book. It was about a girl who's raised by ghosts, which is still about halfway done right now. I'm not too sorry about that. But I was summarizing the idea for what would become The Chosen and the Beautiful to my agent, who had just sort of randomly asked me, hey, do you have anything else going on? And I more or less gave her The Chosen and the Beautiful in the form that it exists now, which involved a queer Asian American Jordan Baker who is skilled with paper magic, the idea of spelling out some of the queer subcontext and adding some more of my own, because why wouldn't I? And, after that and, after I got done with that summation, Diana Fox, my agent, there's a long pause and I'm wondering, is she going to fire me? Was that dumb? And she says very patiently, she's like, me, I'd like you to stop writing the book you're writing now. And I'd like you to start writing this one. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I wrote The Chosen and the Beautiful in about 4 months, which put us right on track for it to come out the first year the copyright was over. So, that's not an accident. That was absolutely deliberate. So, and, I'm not saying it wasn't timely, but I am saying that, this was the year that it could happen. This was the year that business-wise, we knew we could get a lot of attention for it. And this was the year that a lot of feelings I'd been having about the world and the way it worked kind of boiled over and, became a 200-page book.
Love it.
Do you mind if I ask a question, Sarah?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so sort of building on what you were saying there, I'm someone who I read The Great Gatsby in preparation to read your book. So your book got me to finally read The Great Gatsby. And I think it's just been forced on so many people at school that I never I didn't have to read it as part of school and I never got to it. So I read The Great Gatsby and then immediately read your book right after, which was wonderful. And I just, while reading The Great Gatsby, there's so many perspectives that I was curious about, but you never hear from. And the perspective of the women in the novel isn't really imagined very much. And I noticed towards the beginning of the book, you kind of address that when they're talking about, they call us careless because towards the end of The Great Gatsby, Nick calls Daisy and Tom careless. And I was just wondering sort of what I guess, what research did you have to do into what it was like to be a woman in the 20s? And how did you sort of imagine the life of Jordan and Daisy and like the female perspective?
One of the first places I went to start writing from the idea, I need to take a look at what the day-to-day life of women who were a part of Jordan and Daisy's class were doing. Like, what were they doing in general? One of the weird places that I started off was with Daisy's pregnancy, with the birth of Pammy. One of the things that got me when I was reading when I was reading The Great Gatsby, was the fact that Fitzgerald mentioned something he calls, that is called a twilight sleep. This was something that rich women who had any means at all, were desperate for in the 1920s. Basically, it was the idea that a combination of scopolamine, cocktail of other drugs, meant that you would be put under when you started to go into labor. And then the advertising said that, and then you wake up, totally painless birth, and you have a baby in your arms, which sounds like magic. It sounds amazing. It, miracle of science over nature. And the darker part of it was, that's not really how it happened. It was not a painless birth. It was just a birth for which you were knocked insensible. So, and, because these women would be in pain, they would be thrashing and crying. They had to be strapped down, blindfolded. And they had no idea that this was happening until a lot of them started having dreams or memories of it much later on, which sounds, hellish to me. And that sort of told me a lot about Daisy. Daisy is maybe 21 or 22 during the course of The Great Gatsby. And that's something she's been through. She would have been 20 or 19 when that happened. And suddenly the world looks a lot darker, and you have Nick, who is calling rich people careless, and he's not wrong. But as Jordan says, there's a type of careless that women are not allowed to be. And there are types of care that he will never, ever have to worry about taking, because he is white, because he is an able-bodied man. So it was also lots of fun to go into the fact that, to realize that Jordan can't vote at all, and Daisy's had the vote for, I think, maybe a year at this point. And as I was talking about with Diana, she's like, Daisy doesn't vote. And I'm like, oh, I know Daisy does not vote. So if we think about that, and how much worse does the narrative look, and how much less forgiving that world becomes, and that was a fun place to start, honestly.
Yeah, I was also curious about the Manchester Act. What is the history around that? I didn't have a chance to sort of to do research around that.
Well, first, the Manchester Act is something entirely fictional. I made it up. It was very much based on the language of the Chinese Exclusion Acts, and all of the legislation that was coming through. Then, as now, there were a lot of questions and a lot of doubts about these foreigners on our shores. So that is an issue that comes up again and again. Once again, the issue of, well, who is an American? Whose dream is it? And when your dream is just to stay and try to have a life, why is that a problem? And so the Manchester Act was taking a lot of that and then expanding it to include the damned and the dead that have shown up as part of the magical world that I created, and to just sort of give that a sharper focus.
I didn't know it was magical realism going in.
Oh God!
I know, it's my favorite genre. So you have no idea. I wrote, because I try not to really read synopsis too much before I pick up a book, because it's just fun to just go in.
Sure.
And I wrote, like, on the first page, magical realism question mark. I kept reading it, because when they were it's just in the beginning, when they're like floating, I was like, is this a metaphor, or does she really mean it? And it was just the most beautiful thing for the world to just open up completely unexpected. It's just brilliant how it's weaved in.
That's actually a riff off of the original novel. Actually, it's how Nick first sees them, and the idea that they've been floating. And I'm like, no, I want them actually floating. I want some
I love that.
I want some Puritan witch stuff going on right about now.
And the party, imagining the because their parties are already grand in the movies and the books and everything, but imagining it with all the elements that you added is just, I want to see that on film too. Oh my gosh.
But it feels natural, right? It feels like the whole 20s thing just feels like it's just so full of magic, and it's like the fact that you have demons there. It doesn't feel like a huge stretch for me.
What
Am I
I
I
confused?
love,
feel like the magic just like blended into it so well, because there was always, when I read The Great Gatsby, I always had this idea in my head about like just magical, opulent, like just dazzling like beauty, but you put dark elements into the magical world, and I love that so much.
And there's the idea of money and electricity, and it's all magic if you don't have it, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
I
and
love
the
as well how you could read the Great like both of them could be true at the same time. Like the whole time I was reading The Chosen the Beautiful, I was just thinking like, I've just read Nick's account and he is so clueless. Like he doesn't know that any of this is going on because it just like it fits so nicely. And I also noticed like the language, like the prose in your novel fits so well with the prose in The Great Gatsby, even though obviously there's the magical realism element added. Like, how did you match your writing
Yeah.
so closely to The Great Gatsby?
I'm a very good fake. Let's start there. But actually, the biggest thing that helped was reading biographies of F. Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda Fitzgerald as well, because they have a very particular way of talking. They have a very particular way of explaining things, and it is not like it's not that different from what we've got, but everything becomes a lot more casual a lot and a lot less genuine in some ways. There's this really beautiful gloss to every interview I think F. Scott Fitzgerald has ever given. And that is a man who knows how he looks and how people regard him. And that went into a lot of making Jordan, actually, because she is someone who knows how she looks all the time. And she's to the point where it's second nature. She understands what point of view she is putting out, and that bleeds into her narration as well. I mean, hopefully one thing that people got is that Jordan is a narrator with an agenda. She wants to be seen a certain way. There's something she does not want to talk about. I did so much world building for this, and then I started writing, and I'm like, oh, cool. Jordan doesn't care. Jordan doesn't care about any of this. I guess we don't get that. So, and that I'm not unhappy that's the way it turned out, but I did a lot of work that no one ever sees because Jordan does not give a damn.
Was.
I
Did
did.
you say something like that in The Great Gatsby, saying like there seemed to be a lot more going on with Jordan than he was aware, or maybe them, because I did read them both similarly at the same time too, so they might be blending. But yeah, I did definitely see that, how you were saying, because I read in another one of your interviews, you had said that like you were like you said, highlighting all of these things and finding all of the things that it felt like F. Scott Fitzgerald left out, or there could be more to it.
Right. That's one of Fitzgerald's best tricks, I think. So The Great Gatsby clocks in at about 42,000 words, and he fits so much in there, and he implies so much. And one of the cool things that I noticed when I was rereading it was I realized how very little wasn't said that I had just sort of inferred from it from past readings. And when I talked with other people about how they felt about it, they were remembering the same things, like things that weren't in the book, but we're pretty sure happened. My biggest reason, one of the best reasons to do this book from Jordan's point of view, is the fact that Jordan makes absolutely no sense in the original book. Like I kept running flat into that. Like, so she sets up the whole meeting with Gatsby and Daisy, and who the hell does that to their best friend? Hey, so I'm going to set up a meeting with you and the long lost love of your life, and I'm not going to tell you about it. And so, to me, that means that Jordan is either stone cold evil, or she's got her own agenda. And also, there's the fact that The Great Gatsby does not run without Jordan. She is actually a motor that keeps a lot of this going. I assume that Fitzgerald needed her as a plot device, and that's never been good enough for me or for anyone who writes fanfic, I think. So that was part of it, was just opening that up.
So we have a question here. So this is from Ghost Reads or M. So first, as a former goth, you're an icon. Second, given the hugely feminist leanings in The Chosen and the Beautiful, what do you think of the rumors that Zelda Fitzgerald wrote large swaths of GG?
I think that there's a very good chance in that, and I also think that that is something that I am absolutely not enough of an expert to answer for anyone. I've read a lot of the scholarship on it. I think that a lot of people have made some very good cases for it. Um, I also think that whatever that relationship was doing, it was dark and predatory in some very deep and unsavory ways. And I think at the same time, it was so bright, and you try not to look at toxic relationships from the outside because the glamour is a thing. They were very much the chosen people of the 1920s. Like, we think that influencer culture has a thing going on right now. Everything I've read about them, they were a couple that sort of glowed. And I don't know what to make of that more than 100 years on. And I think that if we ever get some proof of that, I think that it will not surprise me in the least.
Good answer.
I really just wrote a book. I'm not. I've only read so much.
Do you mind if I ask about the paper cutting and what tradition, or is that something of your invention, or does that exist in some sort of other mythology somewhere? I just thought that was like such a beautiful image to begin with, and like
It's super cool.
yeah, so cool. Like I will really want this to be made into a movie or TV series just so I can see that. But yeah, I'm just wondering where that came from.
Okay, so paper cutting itself as an art is, I believe, originally Chinese, and it's very, very old. We have traces of it going back more than 2,000 years, and even before we had paper, they were doing something very similar with leather, with leaves. And one of the things that always struck me is it is a type of art, and it is a type of art that's deeply associated with the home and with the quote unquote women's domain of of decorating and beautifying the home. It was supposed to be cheap. It was supposed to be very disposable, and basically it's spread throughout Asia. There's a lot of different paper cutting culture and stories throughout Asia. Um, there's some very impressive art exhibits everywhere. It's fantastic if you guys want to look it up. It's just gorgeous. And the reason why Jordan has paper cutting magic is okay. Wait, can we do spoilers on this one, or should we avoid spoilers?
We can do.
I think we're safe to do
we-
spoilers.
yeah, we can
We
do
usually go into spoilers pretty early on, so spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. All right. Okay,
Okay.
so there is this fantastic bit in The Great Gatsby. It's on like page 2, I think. And for some reason, Nick is talking about one of his ancestors paying someone else to go fight for him in the Civil War. And that just went right over my head every time I read it until like a fairly recent reading. And so that came up to me, gave me the idea of Paper Sons, which is a part of Asian American history, where during the first of the Exclusion Acts, essentially people wanted they were only allowing people to bring in relatives, and so there was this kind of hot trade in declaring yourself the child of someone who was already over on the Golden Mountain, and passing yourself off as a relative so you could get in. And that was really interesting because they put them through some stringent tests, like how big is was your house, who you're related to, like deeply invasive personal tests, and even people who were actually related had to bone up. And the joke was the idea that these were paper sons, relatives only on paper. And then I apparently took that and leaped right to Nick's made of paper. That came really early on, and it sort of joined up with the idea of unreality and perception affecting reality in both The Great Gatsby and in The Chosen and the Beautiful. And so I wanted Jordan to have a certain mastery over her world that did not necessarily come from the way she was raised and the people who raised her. And this was one way into her and into her ideas of art and identity.
the imagery of the heart and what was written on it and everything, just, gosh. I'm sorry.
I
I'm
knew
just
the whole
a fangirl here.
No. It was really fun because I knew from the beginning that Nick was made of paper. I didn't know quite the particulars, but I'm like, he's made of paper. And then I would forget to tell other people about it. And they're like, why is this happening? I'm like, oh, Nick's made of paper. And they're like, no, I didn't know that. I'm like, oh, it's okay. He is.
Yeah, I just finished the book earlier today and I did not see that coming and I'm still reeling from it.
I promise it's in there. He is talking about it all the time.
Well, now I see everything else in a different light, so I'll have to reread everything. Yeah.
I thought I don't know if you intentionally did this. You probably did. Even though Jordan and Gatsby in this story are very like opposing, they're almost like there's a fear too, almost not quite, because Jordan's very she doesn't strike me as someone who's afraid of many people at all, but there are moments like between her and Gatsby that are pretty almost borderline like you're uncomfortable, like scary, like what's he gonna do to her? But at the same time, I felt like there's a lot of parallels between the two of them. Is that something that I just, because, readers pick up random different things that they see, because that's what the beauty of books is. But is that something that you intentionally did, or it just kind of happened, or?
No, absolutely. That was fun because we have the fact that later on, Gatsby is passing as white. Let's start there. That was a big thing, and they're both operating from positions of being outsiders. Her because of race, him ostensibly because of class. And they're both people who are very determined and want to get what they want. And they both are very clear and not guilty about the fact that they like getting their own way best. And, and Nick is someone who will, hem and haw, great or good. How does this look? How does it feel? I believe the joke is he's deeply Lutheran. And Gatsby and Jordan more obviously stand apart, and that's kind of what makes them them. The fact that there's only so much they can hide some things, and they've gone after it with different ideals and with different goals. But that's kind of what both will make sure that they never end up being very good friends, but at the same time make them recognize each other in some deeply uncomfortable ways.
I'm just curious. First of all, how many times have you read The Great Gatsby by now?
Throughout my life, probably at least 20. When researching for this book, when researching for The Chosen the Beautiful, let's say twice. Twice sounds about right. Like I said, I was mentioning earlier, my copy of The Great Gatsby is still just porcupined with all of these Post-it notes, because I'm like, okay, don't forget this. This sounds important. Maybe run this down. And I definitely highlighted that line where Jordan says to Nick and Gatsby, "So are we having a gay time now?" Which no one ever believes that I did not write. That one's come up a few times in interviews, and they're like, "So how do you feel about modern?" I'm like, "I didn't modernize that line. That's in the original. Fitzgerald did that one." It's such a terrible line, isn't it? It's so mean.
Yeah, I wrote that down when you were hinting that Nick and Gatsby were having something going on. I wrote like, Nick and Gatsby ? But it makes so much sense. Same thing with Jordan and Daisy, that feeling. But as you said, like, as a part of her ethnicity and just the way they treat her, that she's more like a pet almost too, sadly, and stuff. And it's just like, it just makes so much sense.
Hopefully the question mark on the Nick and Gatsby thing was taken out, because if that's still a question in your mind, okay, I messed up and I need to go back and fix that.
No, it was just at the very beginning when they kind of had like an exchange, because it makes, like, in The Great Gatsby, it did strike me as strange, like, how connected Nick was to him. And maybe it was just by circumstance that he was the one who ended up having to take care of everything at the end, or maybe because he was fascinated with him or whatnot. But, like, it just makes so much more sense that there was that, like, they were more than just, but he's paper too. It's just there's so much complexity. It's so awesome.
He has a heart. It's just made out of paper.
Right, exactly.
It's a real problem.
I loved that.
I'm just curious. You said you wrote the book over 4 months. What does like your daily routine look like when you're writing so intensely for that time?
Okay, so while I was writing, The Chosen, the Beautiful, I was still more or less working full time at a ghostwriting gig that I'd kept up for years. So let's see, um, get up, make sure my cat realizes that he's still loved. Check to make sure that no one is mad at me in my emails because that's just every day. It's like, who have I pissed off today? Who have I forgotten about? Well, you know what I mean. And so I was pulling down about um, between 4 and 6,000 words of ghostwriting stuff. And then after I finished that, I would write between 1,000 and 2,000 words of The Chosen and the Beautiful. And there were room in there for like cat hugs and stuff, and then just go out and wander the world, try not to let cars hit me, which it's about it.
First time it gave you big inspiration, though.
Yes, yes. It's not inspiration. That's just vehicular manslaughter.
I mean, when you were reading The Great Gatsby in high school.
So we have a question from Mackenzie. Do you have a set way you research, or does it change with each book or each genre?
Okay, so The Chosen and the Beautiful is actually the second novel I've ever written. The first is Siren Queen, which is out next year. I've written novellas, of course. And what I have learned at this point is you never really learn how to write books. You just learn how to write this book. So with The Chosen and the Beautiful, I went after the research with a huge slant towards what was happening in the world of upper class white women during the 1920s. I went after immigration history. I went after queer history. And I went after, this was great, I went after material history because one of the coolest things about the 1920s is the birth of advertising, which is like terrible for us now. We hate it. It's awful. But back then, advertising was new and exciting and just cool. It was showing you a world that not only existed, which a lot of people didn't know, but a world that you could actually have for the low price of $250 in payments every week, which leads to its own problems later on as we head straight into the stock market crash and the Great Depression. But the 1920s, after the privations of World War I and after the sorrow of the Spanish flu, we're in a new and newly touchable world. Everything is wonderful, everything is bright, and electricity is powering it all, and we have light 24 hours a day, and it's magical and beautiful. And so the material history was actually a huge influence on The Great Gatsby, or on The Chosen the Beautiful. I'm sorry.
I love how you wrote Jordan's character so much. There's just so many aspects of her that I really liked, but I always liked that she just seemed to know like the script almost. Like she was just so amazing. Could you just maybe discuss a little bit? I know that you had mentioned before, you talked a little bit about her, but could you tell us a little bit more about how you came to characterizing her and her development as a character throughout the book?
There's this place in your early 20s. I'm gonna be 40 in a few months, so I've got a good 20 years on her, and a lot of writing Jordan was remembering being in my 20s and getting into places that were too old for me to be in, that I shouldn't have been in, and mostly making it work. You know, it's there's at that age you've had a few victories. You haven't had, maybe, with if you're lucky, you've never had some really terrible defeats. You know that you don't know everything, but you know that life goes a lot faster if you make it sound like you do. And that's part of what Jordan is, and that's part of what she comes from. One of the things that was really fun to write is the fact that Jordan is not telling us everything. Like, she deeply loves her Aunt Justine, like so much, that woman is so important to her, and she never wants to talk about her. She makes fun of her a little bit, her friends, her aunt and her ugly suffragette friends, and how they make fun of her when she comes in from the town. But towards the end, Aunt Justine takes a pretty nasty health turn, and Jordan doesn't want to think about it. She doesn't want to talk about it. She mentions it because she has to for the story to run. but that is something that is deeply personal to her, and we don't get into it. And that's part of the way how I put her together, and what I wanted for her in terms of what she shows the world and what she isn't showing the world.
That's fascinating.
I don't quite know what the question that I have is with this other than just how do you do this? But I noticed that the writing is so psychological and observational and mental. And to some extent, F. Scott Fitzgerald has that too in his with like Nick and all of that. But just it seems so real, like you're in their minds and watching it. But like, as you said, sometimes you wonder if they're telling the whole story too. It's just, is this just natural to you, or do you read a lot or watch a lot of things that you get inspiration from, or like how do you get so in their head so detailed?
Some of it is the fact that I'm writing things that I would want to read. Like in a given scene, I want to know what a character thinks of it, because so I've spent a fair amount of time with actors. I've never been an actor, but one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever heard given to an actor, and honestly to a writer as well, is that every single character that you can see on stage, or in my case on a page, they feel something. They're feeling something. They have an opinion on what is going on. No one is ever just standing there. And I think if I think that's where a lot of work starts having some weird issues, where you have characters in the background who are just there to fill in the screen, and you know, no small parts, no small players. Everyone has emotions going on. Everyone, it's so. This is going to be a bit of a weird jump, but okay. I live in downtown Milwaukee, and I hear sirens pretty often. And so every time I hear a siren, my brain just goes, well, okay, that's background noise to me, but someone out there is probably having the worst day of their life.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I go into writing. There's always the possibility that no matter who you're talking to, they're having the worst day of their life, or they're having the best day of their life, or their kid just smiled for the first time, or they just saw like half of a bird on the street and it really messed with them before they showed up for your shift. So that's the world we live in, and that's the world I want to write about.
That's so crazy. I just had that thought earlier today. There was a siren, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
I know, right? It's like there's only so much you can let it in if you want to be like a functional human being, and
Yes.
but when you do let it in, it makes you compassionate. It makes you a little meaner, and it's so much.
And I kind of think that's what's unique about The Great Gatsby is that it's not Nick tells the story, but it's Gatsby, very much Gatsby and Daisy's story. So it makes you so curious about some of the, like Gatsby, and I mean, sorry, Nick is a minor character in the story, even though he tells the story almost. And so it makes you so curious about him and about characters like Jordan, for example. But in your novel, it very much feels like Jordan's story, but you still sort of like she doesn't tell you everything, and she's not necessarily completely reliable. So there's still things that you're wondering about. I guess I wondered, what were you always going to tell the story from first person through Jordan's eyes, or how did you land on that perspective for your novel?
Well, from the beginning, I mean, I think if you are a queer girl, there is something about Jordan that just stands out to you from the beginning. She's got a boy's name. She's a female professional golfer in a time when women weren't allowed to play in the professional leagues. There's something odd and other about her, especially when you get Nick's wonderful description of her, the idea of a soldier with her shoulders very straight, something like that. And it's a great line, and it's fantastic. And so, there's always been the kind of wonder of like, what's going on with her? What does she think about all this? She's probably laughing her head off at a lot of this stuff, which is not something you necessarily get when you read it as a teenager, but becomes increasingly obvious the more you read it as an adult. And there was this thing that struck me about Nick. You're very right when you say he's a minor character, but he's the one who's telling the story. And and maybe you've met them, or maybe you've been them sometimes, but there's some people who have no idea that they're the main character in their own story. They will always see themselves as someone else's sidekick, someone else's scenery, someone else's prop, someone else's minor character. And that's, I mean, if you want to feel sorry for Nick, and I go back and forth on whether I do, um, I think that's where you begin and end it. Why are you being a minor character in someone else's story? And then you have Jordan, who refuses to understand any world where she is not the main character, and that was so much fun to write. You know, she's like, that doesn't sound very much fun for me. I'm like,
Yeah, it's such a contrast, the two perspectives. Like, yeah, and I have to say, like, when I read The Great Gatsby, I didn't know what perspective the chosen the beautiful. Like, I didn't know the perspective of the chosen the beautiful, and the character that I was most like curious about was Jordan. So when I opened the chosen the beautiful, I'm like, yes, Jordan's perspective.
I know, right? She's just got
Yeah.
so much going on.
Yeah.
We have a question from Bridget.
Mhm.
So I would love to hear more about your journey with The Great Gatsby. What struck you about it the first time you read it? What made you want to keep revisiting it? So I know that you had touched on it before, but not sure if Bridget was here for the earlier part. So if you could just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Of course. Okay, so when I first read The Great Gatsby when I was in AP Lit in high school, so young, impressionable, very bored, you know. So one of the things that struck me about it was just how very relatable it felt. And it's not relatable because I am in any way rich or white or, really wanted to get with a girl that I went to war with and then left. That has nothing to do with me. But what really struck me, and now years later strikes me as someone who is now twice as old as I was when I first read it, more so, is the fact of how big the emotions were. You read it as a teenager and you don't get everything, but I think they make a really good choice in giving it to teenagers because it's so big. And when you're a teenager, your emotions are so big. Everything is new and everything hurts. And everything has this possibility of being amazing, and you just don't know how to make it happen. And I mean, you could say in a lot of ways that Gatsby is a very adolescent narrative. You take needs you had from being an adolescent, and then you pour in another 10 years of experience and strength and ability, and look at what happens with adolescent dreams when they get that big and that ungainly and that monstrous. And there was always something of the monster in Gatsby, and I didn't quite understand what was going on then at that point. I wrote the papers, of course, but there's something strange about him, and there is something that unsettles everyone else in the novel, like from Nick down to Daisy and Tom and Jordan. There's something off about him, and if you grow up queer, if you grow up not white, you start trading in monsters pretty fast. And so so if there was anything, maybe a sort of a minor recognition there, the monstrousness of ambition and the monstrous of wanting things you shouldn't have. Does that help?
I would say so.
Sorry, that was a lot, wasn't it?
No, that was my biggest question. Yeah, was because when I read The Great Gatsby, it didn't really do anything for me when I was in high school. I was like, to me, like the party was just a tiny bit, and then there was like the drama between all of them fighting, and I'm like, this feels like a soap opera or something.
It is. It absolutely is. Can you imagine being in that hotel room and you're trying to leave and they won't let you?
No, I love what you did with that scene so much, though. I was like squealing when they did the fake weddings and stuff. I was like, oh,
Okay, so this is going to get a little ridiculous, but all right. So Neil Gaiman has this bit where he taught in The Sandman, where he talks about the great stories, the ones that don't change. And when I went into writing The Chosen the Beautiful, because it was a choice, I could have said no to it. I wanted that story. There is the frame. There is one terrible summer in the 1920s in the life of Jordan Baker, and it's going to end in the same way. Gatsby is going to be dead. Myrtle is going to be dead. Daisy is going to be guilty, and Nick is going to be heartbroken. This is how it ends. And everything I was writing, I wrote The Chosen the Beautiful in a very linear fashion. I basically started from the morning they're floating around, and I went straight to the end where Nick is looking towards the past in The Great Gatsby. Jordan is looking towards the future in The Chosen and the Beautiful. I knew that was going to happen. There were definitely some surprises along the way. did not know I was going to meet Kai and Bai and the rest of the paper cutting troupe until they showed up. Didn't know Aunt Justine, but I have an idea who she was, and I loved her from the beginning as well. But yeah, there's this wonderful sense of inevitability in The Great Gatsby. It is a summer that is going to end in tragedy, and I felt like I would not be playing fair if I didn't end it with that, with something, with basically that tragedy. It was too big a story to really deny in that case.
Yeah, it was, to me, The Great Gatsby it's just a tragic book. Like, it's just full of tragedy and like on such a huge scale, that I agree. I do like how you ended it quite a bit.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah. So M has a question. I think this is a two-part comment, so I'm on part one right now.
Sure.
So you mentioned earlier there was more to the magical world that Jordan just does not care about. Could you pull back the curtain and tell us something unrevealed about the world behind the main story? Or does it not matter to the story because Jordan doesn't care?
Okay, here's a fun one. A lot of Gatsby's magic and the deals that he makes with the devils involve theft. He is stealing shit from all over the world and using it to make his house.
Right.
There's this whole section where I actually map it out for myself and explain it how his deal with the demons works. And Jordan does not give a damn. As a matter of fact, black single nails are totally last year. She's not invested, not interested at all. Like, there's also this section where one of the demons actually does try to talk to her, and she's like, no, I'm doing something, you know. So Gatsby has magic from through his heritage the same way that Jordan does, and he uses it exactly once in the story, and that's to get Daisy off the hook. What he has through the devils, through hell, is a magic that involves removal, theft, and the presumption of ownership. And I think some of that comes through. I hope it does. But there's a mechanical level to it that Jordan did not care about.
Some of that have to do with his feeling of ownership over Daisy, or
He came to that. He came with that one. He was. I mean, I feel like we've all known those people. Like, the only way you love something is by owning it, and it's terrible, and it can be so damaging, and that's part of where Gatsby came from. You just, once again, you just take it bigger, and suddenly you have people who can steal like a single night from a town in Norway, which I thought was really a lot of fun.
So, question. I know that this is a retelling of Gatsby, so I don't know if you'd want to expand out on this world, but is there any chance you would ever write another book in this same world that we dive a little bit more into that, like demon magic and stuff? Because I loved that part.
Yeah.
That's funny that you mention it, because I think I'm allowed to talk about this now. There is a sequel novella that I would like to write for Tor. It takes place about 20 years later. It lets Nick talk, which, you know, I was about, but it's called tentatively it's called Don't Sleep with the Dead, and if you can think about who died and who might be coming back and all that fun stuff, yeah. So hopefully I get to do that.
Oh my gosh.
That's fun, right? That sounds fun.
I'm so excited.
That is so cool. I love that. I love the magical aspect of it just so much, and how, like, I want more of it.
It's so much fun. It is so much fun to write that stuff.
And I love magical realism. I've read a fair amount of it, but I have to say, for some reason, that black nail idea that you put in and how you wrote it so descriptively, to me, I was like, this is a master. You, like, because it makes it feel so real, like, it, because like you said, the 20s, the clothes, the styles, it's the advertising, and like it just fits so well, and yet it's like something that I'm not good enough to think of something like that. It just is like such a like unique magical thing, but makes perfect sense, but not something that I would ever like. I guess it's just like the normalcy of something so simple like that. Like, oh, are they painting it on, or is it from a deal? Like, it's just.
It is so much fun to go into like into the material culture of the 20s and to figure out how you could use it for magic or for your parties like Gatsby does. The idea that magic is not only magical but also cheap.
Do you have any other books that sort of inspired this novel apart from The Great Gatsby, obviously, or just your like writing style, or like the idea of having the retelling be magical realism, or any of that? Are there any other
Oh, there's just a ton of great stuff out there. So part of what put The Great Gatsby into perspective for me is So We Read On by Maureen Corrigan. It's this fantastic nonfiction book about how The Great Gatsby was written and the fact that it was a failure at first and how we've sort of changed the way we feel about it as a country over time. When it comes to sort of getting in the mood for writing that type of thing, Bright Young Things by Welton, which is terrible people doing terrible things, but having a very good time and looking very nice while they do it. I feel it's out of period, and I think I read it partially while I was writing The Chosen and the Beautiful. Silvia Moreno Garcia's let's see, Mexican Gothic, both Mexican Gothic and Gods of Jade and Shadow is fantastic. I can't recommend that one enough.
Yes.
We read Mexican Gothic was one of our other book club books. So,
did you guys like it? Wasn't it great?
Favorite,
Yes.
yeah.
Sarah has it on her.
I am obsessed. I am obsessed with Mexican Gothic.
Oh, it's so freaking good.
Oh
my gosh.
Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I feel like that has a similar socialite but magic.
Yeah, that's I love all of her stuff. It is just so cool. Like for a long time, my only claim to fame was the fact that she accepted one of my short stories for one of her online magazines, and I was very, very proud of that. Let's see, but
That's amazing.
I was super proud of that.
I have an aesthetic question.
Yeah.
Because I love book covers, and the Mexican Gothic is one of my favorite book covers ever. And then I saw your book cover, and I was like, this is perfect. This is just so incredibly beautiful. And behind us is my interpretation of it in Canva for about 2 minutes. But could you tell us about how you came to choosing this cover and how this cover came to be?
Well, unfortunately, first of all, I'm really useless when it comes to art in general. So that's where people like Christine Foltzer at Tor.com comes in, who did the design. Artists like Greg Ruth, who is the artist of that cover in general, and also Rishi Chen, my editor at Tor, and Rishi and Diana Fox, because they have much better artistic eyes than I do. Mostly I just saw it and I just started weeping. So, there's that. I know, right? I was like trying to have like a life and a day, and suddenly they say, it's like, hey, by the way, here's your first book cover. I'm like, oh my God. Right. So it was one of those things where, okay, here's this thing about living in my brain. When I think of people, I mostly think of them as a series of adjectives. There's no picture that shows up in my head. So I know I have adjectives for Jordan. I have a rough idea of what Jordan looks like. But when I saw that cover, I'm like, that's what she looks like. How you been, girl? It's awesome, So that was so cool. It was so neat. And and there's like all these conversations going on over my head. It's like, well, does her neck look right? And because it is so much work, there is so much work put into a cover that I can't. And I'm just sitting there going, it looks very nice. So I think hopefully at this point everyone's figured out how useless I am when it comes to art stuff. But
No, that you answered it just perfectly, because what my other question follow-up was going to be like, is this how you envisioned her? But I guess you're saying that this is how you thought of her, but you only really started to think of that after you saw the cover. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So yeah, one of the reasons why I am a writer is because I'm like, I can use words. I know what the words do.
Yeah, I absolutely love the cover. And then another question I had was, would you do another retelling of a different story? So we have The Great Gatsby. Do you have any other sort of ideas floating around?
Someday I am going to have a reason to do a Tristan and Isolde retelling, and I will absolutely keep the love potion in because that sounds terrible to me. Do you guys know that story? It's a King Arthur one.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Oh, okay. So real quick, in a time capsule, Tristan is one of King Arthur's knights. And the funny thing is, he is much older than the legends of King Arthur. I believe he's Cornish. Actually, he's a Cornish legend, and the whole thing is the fact that he is delivering a young woman to be his uncle's wife, who his uncle's King Mark, King of Cornwall. And during this process, he's trapped on a ship with a woman Isolde, a woman he can't stand and who can't stand him. And what Isolde has is a potion from her mother, which is a love potion, which will guarantee that her marriage to King Mark is a happy one, uniting two warring countries and whatnot. And Isolde and Tristan drink it together by accident. And then we have this whole domino effect of sorrow and fallen countries and infidelity and betrayal and, just tragic Romeo and Juliet stuff. And I've always wanted to do something with that, and I've had no reason to do it, but it sounds cool, right? I mean, either I do it or someone else does it. So if anyone else has any ideas, you should totally do that.
And would you do it
No,
in
I
a
love that.
similar voyeuristic perspective, or would you do it just like how would you approach it?
Okay, so there's already been a retelling from the point of view of Isolde's handmaiden, Brigane, which is, I think, Pamela Dean's The White Raven. I think that's Pamela Dean. Please don't, if someone should correct me if I'm wrong, which is fantastic. It's very good. It has that voyeuristic quality that you mentioned. It's a deeply intimate look at two people who keep fucking up. And I think I don't know if I would do that. I think because like I said, it's already been done very, very well. But I think I'd want to do it from either Tristan or Isolde's point of view and what it's like taking basically a magical drug that isn't even really a roofie. It literally is love. And what happens after that if you genuinely hate the person you're in love with and you're just stuck with them, until the kingdom falls down.
I mean, it's really
It sounds
it's really
cool, right?
intriguing.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
I would read
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Definitely.
I just keep thinking of questions. This isn't related to what we were talking about. But The Great Gatsby is, and I guess this could be a question for everyone. The Great Gatsby is kind of known for having unlikable characters. And I just wondered if you thought your characters were more likable than the original or not.
You want them to be more likable than the original.
And I guess after, if anyone else wants to weigh in with their reading as well.
I think more than having your characters be likable, I think it's much more effective to have them be understandable.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people we don't like that we keep in our lives anyway, better or for worse. And I think that what it comes down to is, and also, to be fair, Nick Carraway was my first unreliable narrator, and you never forget your first. So, I mean, there's that. Got to keep that one. But I would like to hear what everyone else has to say, because that's really interesting.
Yeah, I actually, like, before I started, I was sort of, like, not that I like the characters being unlikable, but I didn't want them to, like, I wanted that sort of mood to continue in the retelling, and I thought it did, especially, like, towards the end. I find Daisy very unlikable, just as she was in the novel, and I find that interesting. Because it's not black and white, and you feel a little bit uncomfortable with them because you're empathizing with the people, and then also a part of you like feels bad about that because they're not always very nice people. So that was my take, but I don't know about everyone else.
I have
Stephanie also said that The White Raven, Diana L. Paxton, I think you're right. I think that sounds right. So Diana Paxson wrote The White Raven, which is very, very good. But yes.
On my TBR.
I hate Tom so much. Like,
Oh my god, I hate Tom
Oh,
too.
everyone hates
He's the
Tom.
worst.
Every rational person hates Tom.
the scene, I felt so bad for Jordan as he's talking about his like racist eugenic BS that he's spewing, and she's sitting there like, I wanted her to just, I knew it would have changed what happened in The Great Gatsby, but man, I wanted her to lay one into him. And then the scene where when he was like, oh, when they were doing the fake marriages that I loved in the hotel room, and he was like, you're ruining the sanctity of marriage. And I'm like, from the first day you've been married, you have been cheating on your wife.
Yeah.
Your asshole cheats on his honeymoon, right? I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about Tom.
And you have the audacity to that nonsense to come out of your mouth. I'm just like, no, he was a character that I don't know if I found any redeeming qualities in him, and I'm still kind of confused why him and Daisy are so like this, but I guess it's because they're both kind of, I don't know, why do you think that Daisy and Tom are the ones for each other?
Because I bet they look amazing together. I bet they fill a magazine cover like no one's business. They are, I mean, the thing is with Tom, your interest in Tom lasts until he opens his damn mouth, right? We all know people like that. And I think what it boils down to is the fact that they look so good together. And, to be fair to Daisy, people have been telling her that she needs someone who looks good right next to her whole life.
But man, poor Jordan, like that, I don't know. I just felt so bad. Like when you love someone so much, but she's seen her faults forever, and she's still, I mean, it's just like, it's just so real and heartbreaking. Everything is heartbreaking about both stories, it's just incredible.
I love the heartbreak though. I love also just terrible like people reading about unlikable characters. I love it. It just, Tom to me is just one of the most like hideous characters ever. But I love this. I love all of the like yelling scenes and the fights and everything. I just love it. I just love to read it. I love to hate Tom. I don't know what it is. It's like, in Game of Thrones when there's Joffrey. Do you know who Joffrey is?
Yeah, but it feels like it feels weirdly good, like scratching a scab open to watch him, right?
Yeah, it's just so like satisfying. And also Daisy, I do not like Daisy as a character. I do not like Daisy as a character. And I love how you incorporated Daisy into this, and also like Angela was saying, Jordan's like love of Daisy and how she sort of, she sort of struggles with that, and just like loving someone who is so flawed and can be so terrible, but at the same time you just can't help that process.
It feels like a part of growing up to have someone like that break your heart, especially if you're a queer girl. That was a lot of queer women wrote to me afterwards and said, yeah, I had a Daisy. I'm like, I am so sorry. Are you doing all right? Is it okay? And and I mean, maybe even if you are straight, there's those intense relationships you have with other girls, because there's no one else in the world who understands what you're going through. At least that's what it feels like at the time. And, and you come up and you're just living in each other's hearts and in each other's minds, and you do terrible things to each other. And then with any luck, one day you grow up and you learn to be better, and you learn to love better, and you learn to want better for yourself.
True.
Yeah. Rose-colored glasses off and you say, what was I thinking?
Right?
Well, yeah, I like that, because sometimes retellings will explain why a character is behaving in a certain way and will make them like try to make excuses for them almost. And I like that you were able to like keep sort of the ambiguity and keep characters like Tom like in the spirit of the original. So yeah.
I agree with what Em said. So she says, I found your Gatsby more understandably unlikable than the original. I totally agree with that, if that makes any sense. The Chosen and the Beautiful's Gatsby has more tangible emptiness, and I found that weirdly more satisfying than the original. That's a, yeah.
Oh,
That's
thank
a
you.
good way of putting it.
No, that's great. That's awesome.
I got goosebumps in the scene where he confronts Jordan at the club. Because it was so like, you know, you've been around, well, not everyone, but some people have been around men like that where you're like, they've got the smile, but underneath you're like, this is dangerous. Something's wrong. Like, they're not messing around here.
There's something in your back of your brain that says, okay, you need to leave the room right the hell now. Yeah. And that Gatsby's got a lot of that going on. It's also the fact that the Cendrillon is, she doesn't say it because Jordan would not like to say such things, but it's one of her safe places. She talks about it being home. The Cendrillon is basically, you know, it's the queer club. It's the place you get to just be yourself. And my goodness, everyone is in fact looking at what you're wearing because, you know, goth club. But it's home, and he's in her house, and he's making threats, and you know, probably having some fun of his own in the corner because it's Gatsby. But you know, it's like he just decided to sideswipe her on his way by.
I have a question. Do you have any questions for us as readers reading your book?
Essentially, did I give you guys a good time? Did I show you a good night? That's what I want to do. And if I didn't, I'd like to know how I would fix that. But that's the big one.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. No,
Yes.
I loved it. Yeah. I've loved all of your works that I've read, actually.
Cool.
I loved Empress of Salt and Fortune. I thought it was amazing. Like, I actually hated The Great Gatsby. Sorry, I know it's one of your favorites, but I love The Chosen and the Beautiful. So you took a book awesome. A story I hated and turned it into something I loved. So yeah, it was great.
No, I'm really glad. It was a little nerve-wracking. I have definitely gotten a few of it's like, how dare you? And I'm like, you know, great American story. I'm like, I'm an American. You gave it to me, which is, oh my God. I was on this interview.
People said, how dare you? Come on.
A little bit, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Someone asked me on an interview recently, what is the one word that would describe The Chosen and the Beautiful? And I should never do rapid fire questions ever again because the truth just comes out. And so the only word I could think of was, it's mine. And I'm like, okay, there was like a better way to have answered that. So, you know, it's very much a piece of myself running around the world for $30 a pop right this minute. So it's been weird.
I felt the same way, actually, Stephanie, because I said to read, because I had reread The Great Gatsby again in preparation for this, and I said, like, the only way that I got through it so quickly was because there's a version that Sean Astin narrates. And as a Lord of the Rings fan, I was like, yes, let's do this. And then I immediately started this right after, and Stephanie started it, and she was like, I don't like The Great Gatsby either, do you? I was like, no, but read it, because I said that you took literal scenes, because like it was so fresh, I would like compare it, and I was like, this is the same sentence, like this is the scene. And as you said, like for people who love fan fiction, like I love fan fiction, like that's exactly what you gave us, almost, is like way better. And then in a magical realism world, and it was just like, can we teach this in school and get rid of that one?
Oh, but speaking of audiobooks, did any of you guys do the audiobook with Natalie Naudis?
I did. So good.
Isn't she amazing? Isn't
so
she freaking amazing? Yeah. She is so well fantastic.
Done.
And no, I haven't, you know, confession, I haven't listened to all of it yet, but I've listened to most of it. And she is so good at what she does. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things, like, I've had to do my own readings now, and I hate it, and I am bad at it. And I realized I did not write these words to be wrapped around a human mouth. And if I ever meet her, I owe her like dinner and flowers. She just knocks it out of the park. She really does.
Yeah. Wow. No, it was amazing. I loved it. I was nervous reading The Great Gatsby because like this was my pick, and I was like, this is going to be my nomination, and I'm not going to like it because I hate The Great Gatsby. So I am like so glad that it was.
I wanted to know who's, because every month basically what we do is a bunch of us will sort of like nominate a book to read, and then we'll do like a poll. We have books coming out that we did a poll on. That all of those will soon be released when I have time. But I have this form, and for that, I don't know why. I don't know if it was intentional or what, but I didn't ask for the person's name beside who. So who
Right.
nominated it, and what the book was. So I am so intrigued that this was your
I actually
pick.
I watched a channel, Jashana. I don't know if anyone else watches her, but she got an arc of it and she just gushed about this book for like a video. And I was like, I gotta read this. It's like I love everything
Yeah.
Jashana loves. And so yeah, that's how it came to be.
Oh, that's fantastic. Do do you watch reading vlogs of people reading the book? That's a personal question, but I'm just curious to know if you do.
I didn't know that was a thing. Like, is it just like an ASMR thing where they just film themselves reading it?
Oh,
Oh,
kind of. Oh,
go ahead, Steph.
sorry. I mean, yeah, like some people do that way, but you just do video clips as you read through the book. So like maybe one day I'll do a clip like, hey, I'm starting the book and stuff. And then after I've read 100 pages, I'll do another clip like, okay, I'm 100 pages in. These are my thoughts. This is what's going on. And then in between, I'll like kind of, or people, not just me, but we'll film like what's going on in our lives and stuff. But yeah.
Oh my god,
And then
that
talk
is
about the
so
book, give a review.
incredibly charming.
It's a thing.
No, that is super cool, and people should do that because that sounds so satisfying. I don't think I would do it for myself because once again, I'm in fandom. There should be a very strong line between the world of writer and honestly of reviewers and creators. I really strongly feel that feels like something that is very much for readers to make and to enjoy. It is, it sounds like so much fun, but it is honestly none of my business. And you know how there's that kind of creeping feeling of being observed? I never want to give anyone that terror of realizing, oh my god, she's reading this, and I'm like, no, I promise, I'm over here, I'm over here with my Good Omens fanfic. I'm fine. It's
Oh, I love Good Omens.
yeah, right.
Oh my
The
gosh,
next
this is the
season
best.
they're gonna do. Did you see that news about they're
Yes.
gonna do?
Yes,
Oh my gosh,
it's gonna be amazing. I want
I'm in
now.
love
I know
with
they're
David
starting
Tennant,
filming
like-
in October.
I'm so
unreal.
excited.
I remember someone being like, "Well, how could you have a season 2 because Terry Pratchett's not here anymore?" And Neil Gaiman's like,
I wrote it
the book
too.
Like, yeah,
Oh,
and
I
I
think yeah.
my reading vlog, I was just like, it's been a while since I've been blown away by a book, like especially because
Did you do a reading vlog on this?
I did. I started college. I haven't been filming much lately, but like
I didn't see it.
because it would just be like I opened it. I wrote it in my notes. I was like, magical realism, Great Gatsby quote. What? And then I was like, wait, what? And like so every page I would turn, I was like discovering something new, and I was like, again, are these metaphors or real magic? And I'm like, no, this is real. And I remember messaging our like group chat, and I was like, you didn't tell me this was magical realism, guys. What is happening?
Sorry.
During the editing
apologize.
process, there was this moment where Diana, who's a deeply editorial agent, she turns to me, she's like, okay, Nee, is this a metaphor or is this really happening? And I'm like, do I have to decide? She's like, yes, you of all people have to decide. I'm like, fine. So that's just throughout writing the whole book, if that was your enjoyment at all.
No, it's
I
very
thought it was
very
real instead of a metaphor.
Yes, I would always rather have the magic be real.
Yes.
We do reading sprints together sometimes where sometimes we'll be reading the same book. Sometimes we'll be reading like different books, and we've only had like a few of them all together. But I think I remember Angela was reading The Chosen and the Beautiful during it. And I think I remember you being like, what is this magical realism? Like, what is this? And I think I gave you the answer. And then I was like, oh no, like you got to figure this out. What am I doing?
No, I did. I sat like I'm a pretty like, well, I feel like I'm a pretty slow reader, but this one, like the thing that took me the longest was all these Post-it notes. Like I was just flying through it. So like it's a very rare gift to be able to personally thank someone for their work and just making, like you said, it's an experience, but also books they're magic in and of themselves, and just thank you so much for creating
I'm so
this.
glad it gave you a good time.
And,
That's exactly what I want. That's fantastic.
Did. And you put it out in the world, and it's just
Now it's everyone else's problem.
Yeah, like when people ask me like, what did you think of the book, etc., and I'll be like, hey, have you read The Great Gatsby? They're like, yes. I'm like, how did you like it? Was it good? Was it not? Yeah. And then I'm like, well, I like this one better than The Great Gatsby. So if
Oh, yeah.
just read it. And I agree with Angela. I think that like if they are reading like The Great Gatsby for English, they got to have this one as well, because I
That would
just
be a
love
cool
the
thing to do in class.
perspective. Sorry?
Yeah. No, that'd be a cool thing to do in class, to read both.
Like, I know. It's like, hey, you
I
want
would
to
love
read this? Okay, well, we'll read this, but we'll also read this perspective as well. Yeah.
Well, I really like that you took a classic like The Great Gatsby that's held up as like the American novel, and then you sort of made it like you made it for the queer community and for like people of color, like you made it for everyone, and you like brought in the perspective of the women, and I think it'd be great to read in the classroom, because I think so many more kids could, see themselves or like have fun with it. So yeah.
I agree.
It kind of reminds me of Hamilton, where they're like, this is the story that we were presented with, but this is all the people that didn't get their voice told, because history is told by the winners, unfortunately, and you did that for this story. You got to add that in, and that would be the perfect component to use in a classroom. Well, maybe not the sex stuff.
I was just thinking, I'm like,
I put in a pretty big sex scene. I was like, there's a lot of sex in there.
My parents might be a little upset by that.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe individual chapters, maybe, but yeah.
Maybe a college class.
College, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Love it. Oh, thank you so much for spending time.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, this was
thank
fun.
you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. I hope you guys have a good weekend, okay?
Thanks, you
Oh,
too.
you too. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right. Good night. Good night.
Good
Good night.
I don't know.
She's so nice.
I know.
I love her.
Yeah.
You can join all of our live shows.
I also
you all want to keep discussing, or how would you like to proceed now?
I've just been fangirling this whole time how good this is.
Have you read anything else by her, Angela?
Okay, I was reading some of her interviews before, because I didn't want to like ask the same questions that she's asked a million times. And that's when I found out that she wrote The Empress of Salt and Fortune. And I've seen that everywhere, and the sequel. And so I'm like, this was the first book that I read that she wrote, but I'm like, oh my God, like
I think you would love it. It's really good.
Okay, I'm definitely bumping that up on my TBR.
It's really short too. Like I read it in a couple hours. Like it's so short, but it's really, really good.
Well, I think like when you just find a writer and it just clicks with you. Like the only other people that I've had before that was like that for me was Erin Morgenstern. Like I clearly like the very beautiful, deep, magical realism writing. I don't know, man. It feels surreal that I got to talk to her, because this is the same way. Like I said, I tabbed like every passage almost. I'm like, this was breathtaking. This was breathtaking. The way that she described this was just unreal. And it's just like, yeah.
I love the way that she does it, because I don't really like magical realism when it's not real, but I love it when it is real. And so far what I've read of her, like, it's real. So, it's just so beautiful the way she's, and the same with Erin Morgenstern. I feel the same way. Is like her magical realism is like real magic. Yeah. Like it, I don't know. I love it. I love the way that both of them do it as well. So I agree.
So when I was reading this book, it was it was really an interesting experience because like so much of the time like I do what Angela does and I write post-its and I write notes like extensively, and like I just kind of went into it and I just sort of like experienced the book when I was reading it, which was a very strange feeling for me because as Enneagram type 1, like I don't know how to do that. You know, I don't know how to just like chill and just like read a book and just be kind of immersed in it without like all of that sort of thing. Yeah, but that's just how I felt about this as I was reading it. It was really good.
Can we say that this is a top shelf book? I feel like, I mean, just, I loved it too. I'm so excited that this was chosen. Good choice, Stephanie.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
good
I'm
choice.
so glad that you liked my choice because I feel like Emma was so not loved. So I've redeemed myself.
Listen,
Did you pick Emma?
Yeah.
listen, Stephanie, I love Emma so much that I just got the movie in the mail today to own. I
Dang,
love
I
Emma.
picked good books for you, apparently.
Apparently, Stephanie just knows what books I need in my life.
Angela, is it the new movie?
Yes, I
I
love.
love that one with the same actress from the Queen's. I love that one. It's so funny.
I thought it was hilarious. I see your face, Sarah. I see your face. It's. Did you watch the movie? The new one?
I tried.
Okay. Well,
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
ouch.
I'm sorry. My
Don't
face
be-
tells everything all the time about how I
No,
feel
that's-
about the things.
You know what?
So-
Kristen doesn't like the movie either. So you're not alone, Sarah.
No, it's just funny that I didn't know you picked Emma and everybody else like had issues with it, and I'm like, I loved it. I'm getting the movie today. It's.
I don't
I
know
also
if
liked
I've read
Emma.
any others that have won. Have I? Like, I don't know if we've read any of my picks.
Finding Silver is coming up, right?
Oh yeah, that one did.
Yeah.
That one did. Yeah.
Is that yours?
Mm-hmm.
And mine was
Very
Chosen in
nice.
Chosen the Beautiful. The Beautiful Ones. That was
Beautiful
mine.
Ones by
and that's
Sylvia
coming
Moreno
up too.
Garcia. Yeah.
I feel like
Nice.
that one might be like I have hopes for that one because like you loved Mexican Gothic. We've got like the high society socialite vibe for like us that liked Jane Austen or, you know, The Chosen and the Beautiful, and like I don't know anything else about it, but there's also like telekinesis, so there's got that element. So I have hopes that that'll satisfy a lot of us. We'll see.
Does it kind of, when you read the description, does it give you a little bit of like magical Bridgerton vibes?
I've never read Bridgerton. I don't know what that is.
Oh, I've
TV
watched the
show.
TV show.
What is it called? Like a brazier? Like what? Oh,
Corset?
shoot. Court. Let me look up this term. It's a hilarious term for that type of book. But
Oh, bodice ripper. Is that what you're
What?
thinking of? Like a
Sorry?
bodice ripper?
yes,
Is that a book? Oh,
That,
I
the
get what you
Bridgerton
mean.
books.
Is that like
are.
almost like saying like smut or something?
Yes, bodice ripper. Yep. It's like historical smut.
yes.
Honest river, gotcha.
Yes.
I don't know if there's any of that in the Beautiful Ones. I doubt it, but you never know.
I wouldn't be surprised. Did you read Mexican Gothic? The like almost rape scene?
Ooh, yeah.
Let me get our next book. I'm gonna be right back.
Yeah. Oh, I am looking forward to that one.
Oh, we just spoiled what some of the next books are, and I guess it wasn't announced yet. Well,
Oh, I'm sorry.
anyone who's here in the chat, sorry, I just spoiled what some of our next reads are going to be.
But no, that's okay. I was thinking, huh? I'm totally okay with us spoiling it. It's actually probably long overdue that I sort of say what they are. It's just been a challenging week, I think. But
Do not,
you know what I
no judgment.
You know what I mean. So this is our October book. So The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina, and this is by Zoraida Cordova. And so Zoraida is going to be joining us for our October live show. And I am so excited because, like, I mean, I'm not completely done the book, but I am about 90 pages or so in it, and I love it.
Ooh, yay.
I have a friend
I
who
love
already
it.
read
I don't know
it
how
and
you guys are gonna
loved it.
think about what. Sorry.
Can you give a little? Because I haven't.
No, I had a friend who already read it and loved it. She read an arc.
I have not really
Yes,
seen
Bridget,
very.
come join us.
Did Bridget? Let me see. Yes.
She's like, what?
Yes, we are gonna be having the author, and it's just so cool. So, did you ask for a little bit about like what this is about?
I did, yeah. Because
Okay.
I haven't looked at it yet, so.
I haven't really synthesized my thoughts on this yet, but basically what happens is so there is Orchidea Divina, and she's like the grandmother of like several children. There's like a whole sort of extensive like family tree, and you can see the family tree as a map in here. And why there is a tree, it becomes much more clear why, and why there are like rose petals and that sort of thing. But basically, what happens, I'll read the very first bit. She sends a letter to all of her inheritees. I don't know if that's what they're called, but anyone who will benefit from her death. So she basically writes this. The stars have shifted. The earth has turned. The time is here. I am dying. Come and collect your inheritance. So she invites them to her funeral and to collect their inheritance from her death. And it is so cool.
That sounds amazing.
That was an excellent synopsis. That sounds
I
interesting.
actually already added it to my TBR. I played my game and it's on there and I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I went and
and
bought it like the day it came out, and it's the cover alone is just so hard not to read, but also I know that that's not what happened in what was that movie? Knives Out. I know that that's not what happened, but it still kind of gives me the same vibes of like a big family, a group of people. They might be a little bit shady. Like I heard there's a book, The Inheritance Games, that it reminds me of that too. I don't know. I just like that whole vibe of like big families and all these like different people and personalities.
So,
isn't there magic in it? No. Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't make that up.
Yeah.
I've never read it. I thought it was in the synopsis because it said there's like brujas, right?
Yeah, there's magic in it.
Yeah, there's brujas, so there are witches, and there may be a witch on the cover.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Or
you
may
like,
not
like
be.
I was spoiling something. I'm like, I haven't read it. I'm not spoiling anything.
No, but it's so
No,
cool.
I don't think so.
It's so cool.
I'm excited.
And it has like Ecuadorian sort of ties in with it as well. And one thing that I am finding so far that I really enjoy, I don't want to give too much away, but it's very beautifully written, but it's actually also really funny so far.
Oh,
like
great.
some of the comments that the family members say, it's so funny. And one other thing about this that I can relate to, like I'm not Ecuadorian, but I'm Portuguese. And so we have like a very big family, and people have very big personalities, and there's just so many family members. And that part of it, I'm really loving as well. And sort of trying to understand why people, are the way that they are and why they act the way that they do. And that sort of part is really interesting. But yeah, there's a witch.
Perfect for October.
Like hearing sirens right now, and it makes me think of that conversation with Nghi Vo where she was talking about the siren.
The same thing. Like I thought that I was the only one that thought that, but now apparently that's pretty common. Like because I've thought that too, where you start to think about, oh no, like that's something not good.
Yeah. I just had that thought earlier today, and the fact that she said that, I was like, oh my god.
I feel that way about like when the helicopter comes to the hospital, because it doesn't even faze me anymore. Like it lands and stuff, but like visitors and stuff, they'll be like, oh no, and I'm like, it's fine. Like it's just the life. Like, so I don't know. You get that where you kind of like get so used to something, and they're like, but is it a kid? Is it a baby? I'm like, yeah, probably. And like, I don't know. I do agree. Like when you live downtown, you hear the sirens all the time too, and you're like, yeah. You just get so used to things, you desensitize to them.
Yeah. And
That was
usually I
deep.
feel that way
She's very
too.
deep.
That was very deep.
Yeah, I
When she
loved
said
how
that.
much like anytime you asked a question, she'd be like, well, and then she would have like, you could tell she'd really thought about it before. And I was like,
Yeah.
but for every question you ask, and it just goes to show you like how much the author knows that doesn't end up in the book, and like how much research goes into the book, and like how much of the world outside of the book they know. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. And how like every choice that they make in the novel has been so like thought through as well.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love about having discussions with the authors is just seeing like how intentional so many aspects of it really are, and sort of the choices and I guess the meaning behind it. And I thought that was cool to ask too about her writing routine.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how the ability to write as much as she does, writing for ghostwriting and then for her books like in one day. I'm like, oh my goodness. Impressive as heck. Oh my gosh.
Would this be a pandemic book? Like, would she have written it during the pandemic? Well, I don't know how soon after.
Well, she said it
wrote
only
it
took
came
her
out.
4 months, so I'm guessing probably yes.
Yeah.
I thought so. Yeah, probably. Probably yes. That's amazing to me. She wrote this in 4 months.
I know.
While
That's impressive.
while working a full-time or part-time job as a ghostwriter?
I don't know what it was with ghostwriting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought she said full time because I was like,
Yeah, I think she did as well. Yeah.
Oh, Rob, that's a no from me.
Oh, I definitely do.
I
But,
definitely do.
not very
Yeah,
well.
tell us about what you're thinking of writing.
I have lots of ideas. I've done a fair number of like creative writing courses and stuff through university, like when I could, because my degree wasn't like, it was just electives. But yeah, I don't like, I'd love to do more writing than I do. But yeah, I'd love to start with like middle grade or something, something that like,
Oh yeah.
I don't want to take it too seriously. Like I want it to be like silly or fun or light. So yeah, that's like what I'm thinking of now is middle grade, and I have like a plot in mind. It's just not getting written. So yeah. Yeah.
I would love to, but like my thing is, well, first I'm gonna compliment myself and then put myself down a peg. Number one, like I'm a pretty decent writer. Like I used to write fan fiction and stuff like I'm not I never put it anywhere. It was just in my Google Docs at home. But like I am a pretty decent writer. However, and the biggest thing is I am not creative at all. I can't come up with my own. That's why I would write fan fiction, because I had the material there and it invoked such an emotional thing to me that I'm like, okay, I need to expand upon this. Kind of like how she was saying, like fill in the gaps of what you wanted more of. But I can't come up with my own stuff. So I don't know if I would ever be able to write a book because I just can't think of anything on my own. So probably not.
I feel like though,
expand like squad, yep.
I feel like fan fiction is creative though, because you're taking it further, and like everything someone writes, you're in a way you're reinventing something that someone else has written. Like you know, like you're just sort of like taking from borrowing from different places and putting your like, yeah, I bet you could do it.
You could do retellings. Retellings are huge right now.
Well,
I
heard
love
you
retellings.
said this. I think it was maybe an author that we listened. No. Watch it be like a hugely famous, like Octavia E. Butler or something. But I heard somebody say, right, like if you're not finding something that you want to read, write it yourself. And so, like, I do have some genres. Like, I don't think there's enough books about pirates. I don't think there's enough paranormal books. I don't think, like, there are some things that I could do, but again, no ideas. No ideas.
I sort of, like, since I was a child, if I'm ever in like a waiting room or on an airplane, I have like I don't get bored because I'll just like go into my head and be like, oh, like playing around with little characters and like just daydreaming, I guess is the word for it. And I wish I could just take it one step further and put that in writing. I need like your writing ability, Angela. Combined, we'd be all set.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love that genre. You are absolutely on it. Like, I love magical surrealism. I love all of that. I just don't have any of my own good ideas. Maybe when I'm much older. Well, Angeline Booley, she just did a video the other day talking about
TikTok.
on TikTok. That was what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, TikTok.
Like, I don't remember how old she is, but she was saying that, like, yeah, I just wrote my first book now, and it's like a New York Times bestseller and all this stuff, and I'm just like, that's so inspirational to me because we can all think like,
you can get there
someday. We all could, I know.
You know that she actually was mentioned as one of Time's like best YA like books or like authors, and I was like, that's Time. That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's just
so
so
inspirational.
amazing.
Did you see the list though?
Sorry?
Did you actually look at the list though? Like, I mean, nothing against her making it. Like, that is phenomenal. But I was looking at the list and I was like, those aren't all YA books. Like, what you guys doing?
I didn't watch it all, but I know that I think it's like Bookish Realm and maybe Books Like Whoa. I don't know if you know who they both are, but they're both like booktubers, and they have like sort of a live reaction of how they felt about each one of the like 100 Time nominees, but I haven't seen it yet. And that's how I was gonna like see all the nominees, but I just haven't got into it yet.
I get that. Time. Like, no one has time right now.
What about either of you? Would you write anything?
Me, no.
Stephanie and Sarah.
Nope. Hard pass.
I write science stuff, but it's like research. Yeah. You know what I mean? I've always sort of
science fiction that you would read.
No.
Oh, darn.
I would never write science fiction. Never. No.
I just research papers and
this is like neurocognition and like that kind of stuff. But like if I were to do anything sort of creative, I think that it would be either like a graphic novel I would do, or cool. I would do a thriller. That's that no.
You would do such an amazing graphic novel. Oh my gosh. Number one, the art talent. Number two, like, imagine if you wrote one about cats too.
Well, I used to actually have a comic about my cat Jasmine, and that so I used to have that. But then the other genre I would do for sure is a thriller. But if I had time, I was so upset. But this was the coolest thing ever. Okay, so one night I had this incredibly clear vision, just like everything about this like one thriller that I wanted to write. And I had it laid out. I was going to NaNoWriMo it, like all of this kind of stuff. And then Lisa Jewell came out with Then She Was Gone. And I read the book and I was like, this is like so similar to the thriller that I wanted to write. But then I read it and I was like, I could never do what she did because that is like, she wrote it so incredibly well. And so I just like crumpled up my idea and it was just like, telling like everyone like you should read Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell because it was so good. But I just had like similar like plot elements and stuff. But I love her. Like I think that she is like a great writer, and I could never write like how she did that book. So then I was like, you know what? Maybe a graphic novel I could do.
I would read it for sure.
Kristen writes, or like she writes, she does NaNoWriMo, and she's interested in children's literature as well, and we've talked about it before. So yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I was going to say that too. I forgot.
Yeah, I've seen her posts about NaNoWriMo sometimes.
Yeah. So,
by the way, Kristen's just feeling under the weather. That's why she's not here.
Yeah. Unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's that time of year.
Feels better soon.
So many people are just getting colds and the flu and all this stuff.
Well, I mean, we didn't get them because we were all isolating, and so now our immune system's like, oh yeah, we ain't ready for that.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is like the longest I've ever gone without getting sick. I think it was like over 2 years ago that I even had like a runny nose.
Me too. I've been healthy forever.
Yeah, and that must be rare as a nurse, and also as a teacher because you're interacting with so many kids, but not during pandemic time. Yeah,
that's so true. Thanks for bringing that up too.
Lauren loved this book. Sorry, back.
I feel like that's Angela's this book is to Angela what Mexican Gothic was to Sarah. That's what I'm getting.
That kind of feels like that's what it is. Yeah, like it just was perfect. For you and such a great
experience. Books are each of ours, would we say, like, if we had to pick one of the books we've read, which one do you think each of us is like, that was their favorite? Because I feel Angela and Sarah, those two, like
I just love
that's pretty easy.
So much. I mean, there are others that I love so much too. Another big one was Black Girl Unlimited, but that one hurt me really badly, but it was really good.
You'd reread.
I wouldn't reread it. This one I'm already planning on rereading. So Mexican Gothic maybe.
Which one is yours, Stephanie?
Yeah.
I don't even remember all the books we've read. I'm gonna go look on our Instagram and see.
I'm scrolling back through Instagram now and being like, what did we read?
I feel like Laura's. Could I just say what I think yours is? But I could be totally wrong. I think that yours is potentially The Song of Achilles.
That's the one.
That's the one I always associate with you.
The one that genuinely because I intellectualize everything, and the one where without even thinking, I was like, I love this. That's Song of Achilles. Everything else, I'm like, well, I start reading, I'm like, well, that's cool, and then I'm all in my head. But the one where I'm just turning the pages in the story would be Song of Achilles. I also really liked Clara and the Sun, but not in quite the same way.
I think it's Illumicrate. Have you seen their special edition Song of Achilles and Circes that are going to be for sale next year? Because you should check it out, Laura.
I didn't love them. They're green.
Oh, are they?
Wait, let me see if I can pull this up. So what is it?
Illumicrate. By the way, I got my Illumicrate Empire of the Vampire. It is probably the most beautiful book ever. I'm in love.
God.
So gorgeous.
I like the green. This is perfectly my
I
Hobbit.
don't like it.
I love anything Hobbity, and this totally.
I think I'm seeing it, and I don't.
It's foiled, I believe, too.
Oh, that's gorgeous. See, I don't own a lot of the recently the books that I've been reading. I've been getting from the library and audiobooks, so I don't even own these, and I want to own them because I love both of them. So very tempting.
Yeah. What about anyone here today? If anybody else read books with us, what was the one that
I think Asenia is probably away? I always associate her with the Unhoneymooners.
Me too.
Yeah, so
I feel like she just loved it, right?
Yes, and I should also say that Yesenia, like we all wish her like so well, but you know, like it is quite a lot. It is quite a lot to be part of the book club, and of course, we love her so much. So she just felt it was probably the best idea right now after doing like a move, you know, to take some time away from the book club. And so yeah, so but we
miss
just
her.
we miss her like
Oh,
crazy.
I do.
We miss her like crazy, and I love Yesenia so much.
Stephanie, you never said your favorite.
Yeah,
I don't know. Is it bad? Like, I feel like we haven't had my book that's my book yet. Like, it's still coming, I think.
I feel like yours is okay.
Looking back at the ones we've read.
I know. I don't know if all of them are
kind
on there.
I kind of feel like you liked Rebecca quite a bit though, right?
Oh, I did. Oh, Rebecca wasn't in our pictures, so maybe that's why I didn't think of it. I did like. Oh, it is. There it is. The one Rebecca. I did like Rebecca quite a bit. Yeah, that one might be my favorite of the ones that we've read. You're right.
And
You
I
know,
think
Rebecca would
that's
be
the one I
my
associate with you.
That was my pick too. Yay, we did get another of my picks in there. I forgot.
Rebecca would be my other one that is like one of my all-time favorite books just in general. Because I had already read Rebecca before this, before the live. Or before we chose it. I had read it like months beforehand. And it was like one of my new all-time favorites. I will say there's just a little more that this gives me. Because like this just has everything. I don't know. Like you said,
It has
ticks all your
magic.
boxes.
Like the magic in it.
The magic, I think, is what really, but not even just that. It was like you said, the prose, the magic. I noticed that I really like authors that draw on all 5 of the senses when they make sure to describe what it smells like and what they're hearing and all that stuff rather than just what they're seeing. And I noticed that Nghi Vo did that a lot too. So I think there's just so many little extra special things.
I feel like that's I feel like for you, when I think of like what type of book that you like, Angela, it's very
queer
like,
too. That's great.
Huh? Oh yes.
And queer. That's great. Always a plus.
Always a plus.
Yeah.
I always just think of just like the senses, or almost like the book needs to be written as though you're experiencing like synesthesia in a sense.
What do you mean? Like through, I don't know that word, like through your...
Like crossing of the senses.
Like crossing of the senses. So like you're reading,
Yeah.
but you're also associating with it with like vivid like smells. And I have a type of synesthesia. It's really strange. I have lexical gustatory synesthesia. And so do you know what that is?
Like when I taste, when you hear certain, sorry, you explain it because
that's exactly what it is. So like when I hear people talk, sounds have taste. All sounds have some kind of taste to me. So when I hear certain people talk, some people have like a salty voice, some people have like
oh my gosh.
And yeah, so whenever, for instance, whenever I hear the word apple, I taste like apple sauce. Whenever I hear the word chocolate, I taste chocolate. Whenever I hear the word Peter or Piper or whatever, I taste pickles.
So do you, question, so are you actually experiencing the taste, or is it association, and does it happen with everything? So like I have a friend who has synesthesia, but she associates colors and words or sounds. So she'll say like, "Oh, that's a red word."
My brother is like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you actually like experience the taste, and is it for everything, or is it just an association? I don't know how to. Yeah.
So I can describe it as like when I say something is like tastes salty, it's like I have licked salt. So like it's completely vivid, and I thought that everyone had this. And I thought everyone was so weird. Like I talked to my partner about this, my boyfriend, And I told him, like, isn't it just so weird how, like, the word chicken tastes like chicken? And I hate that because I'm, like, vegan. And he was like, what? And I was like, no, like, the word chicken, it tastes, that's what it tastes like to me. And he's like, and I was like, don't you, like, taste everything that you hear? Like, doesn't and he was like, no.
So can it be uncomfortable? Like, do you have bad taste?
Absolutely. Like, I've had to change lecturers because one of them tasted just like a salad every time I heard my lecturer talk, and it was making me so uncomfortable. So I had to switch calculus teachers.
Oh
Wow.
Funny.
So
Yeah.
That's something. Okay, so we're talking about writing. That's an interesting detail that you have a lot of personal experience with, that if you put that into a book as like a main character having that would just make it so real and vivid and unique. Like, that's the kind of stuff you should like potentially would be neat to like.
It's funny that you say that, because the first time I heard of synesthesia was in a young adult or children's book, and the main character had synesthesia, and it was called A Mango-Shaped Space by Wendy Mass. I don't remember if it was good. Like, I liked it as a young adult / I think I was even like not even a teenager yet, but I think, Sarah, it's worth looking up because it also has a cat central to the to the story.
See, the type of book
Go ahead.
Well, see, you say fiction, I say randomized controlled study. So, like, that, like, I would like to do, like, maybe, like, a study or, like, do some sort of, like, research project on it. I'm like, I don't really want to write about it. Sorry, Stephanie.
No, you're fine. I would say a lot of times people associate it with psychedelics as well. So a lot of times if you're like take psilocybin, then you'll experience synesthesia as well. So you can actually induce it in people who don't have it naturally.
That's so interesting.
You can. And I think Billie Eilish has it, like, has like one form. I have like different forms too. So like so when I see numbers, they have colors. If they're written in black, they still have like a hue to them. And I see that and like other people don't. And I remember one time somebody was trying to say, like, are you faking this? Is this true? And so I think what they did, this was like one of my like one of the students that was in the group, and he totally didn't believe me at all or whatever, and then showed me a page and was like, "Okay, point out if the number 4 looks red, draw the pattern that you see." And then I was like, "Yeah, it's an 8." And then he was like, "Oh."
Wait, I don't understand that.
So how do I describe this? So there was like there was basically like a black and white page. All of the letters were in black, or sorry, all of the numbers were in black, but the 4s were characterized in such a way where if you were to see color, you would see a pattern. So he was saying like, okay, so if you can see this, and then everything else had like patterns woven within, and he was like, so can you see that? And then I said yes. And then, by the way, yellow 2 is a 1. And he was like, what? So then I just started to say like, oh, this has like this pattern, and I wouldn't stop talking about it. But the only one that he was privy to at the time was that 4 was in an 8. So
I don't have that with that, but like I wonder if anybody else does, because like you said, you don't know unless you've thought about it to ask. Like, does anybody, like, do you have feelings about things? Like for me, like I organize like my bookshelf for the most part, like how the book feels, like things that feel the same as each other, or like a certain drink will feel a certain way as opposed
like
to
tactile, like
no,
kind
like
of
a feeling, like
emotion,
not like happy, sad, or anything, but like I don't know. I don't always think in words. I'm more thinking like concepts rather than not always just words. So I don't know. Like I wouldn't be able to say like, oh, these are sad books, because it's not sad or anything. It's just like they feel
Like the atmosphere, kind of.
The concept almost. Yeah, like I don't know. This is
I
I don't know.
I think
read
that
somewhere-
this is some kind of synesthesia because it's incredibly difficult to explain.
It is
But it's so straightforward to you.
Yeah,
Well,
to me it makes total sense. I'm like, yeah, these things match. But yeah.
I read somewhere, I think in like my introduction to psychology course or something, that there's a theory that everyone is born with like babies have synesthesia, and as their brains develop, like the wiring uncrosses, and so it's like more common for children to have synesthesia, and then just some people don't grow out of it, kind of. But when I was younger, and like I can remember all of these now, but I had a very strong, like everything had a personality. Like each of my fingers had a different personality. All the numbers in the alphabet had a different personality. Like letters had like this finger, you're like, anyway, all like things had personalities, and I definitely grew out of it, but like it was ingrained enough that I can remember like 4 is a really nice number. He's a really nice person. They're really
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think maybe Stephanie knows more about this than I do from like a developmental sort of perspective. But like I was looking at this like neuro textbook that one of my like previous like med school professors helped co-write. And so she had this sort of portion on synesthesia. And yeah, like you were saying, that initially in development, like our senses cross over much more than they do as they separate like later on throughout like development. So like there can be crossing between like how something sounds and smells, or how something like how colors appear, or how like you can feel certain things, and and the crosses and the senses just kind of like cross over and don't distinguish themselves completely from one another until later on. And then with some people, those connections never quite separate like later on, and it can be more like there can be sort of a spectrum of like how intensely somebody still feels it. Like there can be almost like this sort of thing where like you're older, you don't necessarily feel it, but you can sort of remember what those connections were like when you were younger. So you still have an association, but you don't have the actual like sensation, like even though you're older. So you can look back on it and be like, hey, that's why. But yeah, I forget like at what point in development they start to just like distinguish themselves for another, but it makes sense because like all of that sort of aspect, like to me, like neurology and that sort of aspect, it's just all wires. Like we're like computers, and our brains are distinct wires, and how our synapses work. Like we're able to manipulate them with drugs. We're able to manipulate them by certain behaviors, cognitive behavioral therapy, etc. And I just think that's fascinating that, like Stephanie was saying, that you can induce those sort of crossing of the senses with like drugs.
Yeah.
Can we all agree that being a human and being alive is wild?
Well, how do we survive?
I don't know. I'm like, this is an experience.
This is cool that Brittany said that her top 3 were Black Girl Unlimited, Clara and the Sun, and then Mexican Gothic, in that order.
Bridget.
I mean, those are a lot of you.
I said Brittany, sorry. Bridget.
I knew what you meant.
I knew what you meant. I just wanted to make
I'm like, after a certain time, my brain doesn't work. So,
well, also the news about Britney Spears. Her father's not her conservator anymore.
Yeah.
So
Good
so I don't know
stuff.
if you had that on your mind. Okay, never mind. Anyway.
No, I have it on my mind every single day. There's this like there's this YouTuber I watch, Sloan, SLO4N. He has like 500,000 subscribers by now, but he's following that process like intensely. And like every single day I'm just like, "Okay, what's up?
See,
what's going on? Is she free yet? Is she out of this conservator?" ship, very strong opinions about Britney Spears and the conservatorship, obviously. So
Sorry, I didn't mean
Yeah.
to derail the comment. I just wanted to make sure her name
No.
was.
no, you start talking about Britney Spears,
No, I feel you. I agree.
Yeah.
Black Girl Unlimited, Clara and the Sun, and Mexican. I think the reason why Mexican Gothic, one of the reasons was hard for me is because of how much I utilize like putting myself in other people's shoes and the senses and stuff. And like there is a scene where he spit in her mouth and I was like I couldn't and then like the mushrooms and stuff. I'm not going to go into too much detail because no spoilers. But yeah, like I think that Mexican Gothic kind of just like made me go like a little too much.
There's a part in my vlog where I'm just like reading it, and it gets to that sort of part where like all that crazy stuff is happening.
Yeah.
And in my vlog, my face is just like, what the heck is going on? And why do I actually really like this? It's so strange. I was like, this is the weirdest book ever. And there's like some like strange stuff in here, that's for sure. But like not in the same way so far. Like Mexican Gothic is wild. And like I think that it would be a really interesting like show to watch, movie to watch. Yeah.
I do agree, definitely. That would be so like atmospheric and creepy.
That would
Yeah,
be like a mini
I
series.
agree. Yeah.
I really hope that Nghi Vo was just not able to tell us and there's something happening that could be adapted from this book, because how beautiful would that be? Like the stuff.
Oh, did we ask if there was an adaptation?
Stephanie asked if there's gonna be anything else written, so I'm so excited to hear about that
Right.
short story. But like
I know.
it might be also in a phase. Sometimes people say like, oh, it's too soon to say, or they're not allowed to say, or maybe it hasn't been like offered yet or anything. But like this would be such a beautiful book to watch too.
I think
Yeah,
it would be
would.
an amazing I think it would be an amazing movie to watch. And it would just be so beautiful.
Frozen and the Beautiful.
I need to head out soon. I am tired.
No.
I have no reason other than long day.
That's fair. It's been 2 hours.
Yeah,
it
we
really
had
has
good chat.
Really
But-
quick, was this the author or was it the next month's author who could be for 30 minutes?
Next
Did we
month,
hold
right?
her late?
Oh, I feel so I think okay, so when I talked to Nghi Vo, if you're watching, I'm sorry. I had mentioned that this would be 30 or 45 minutes, but it went longer, so thank you so much for joining us for longer. Oh my
He's
goodness.
enjoying it though, so
Yeah.
I
I think Sareda though I think that she said that she can be here for 30 minutes. So maybe timekeeper Kristen will be a better timekeeper than myself, because I seem to have no I just yeah.
Well, I feel like if they had to go, they would say that they
I
had
think
to
so.
leave. So yeah, I guess next time we can just ask and be like, okay, time's that was so much fun though. I'm so
It was.
It
Yeah.
It was. I'm thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, everybody's going to bed.
Yeah,
our book-
everyone's just
we
like,
have-
oh, I will.
Inheritance of Zoraida. I'll get that. The
Kids
Secret
Adventure.
History, and then December is some Christmas story.
Christmas Days? Is that right?
Oh, Christmas Days. Yeah, that was
Christmas
one of
Days. I
our-
was like, I know it's a short story collection, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
I think that'll
January
be
is
a
Spinning
lot of
Silver,
fun.
and then February is the Beautiful Ones. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, this
What
sounds
is
great.
sorry? What is January? One more time.
Spinning Silver.
Spinning Silver. Okay.
Yeah,
I am
fine,
so
I
excited
then-
for that one. You guys have no idea. I have like a special
No, me
edition
too.
from Illuma Crate, and it's gorgeous.
Ooh. I'm excited that you said that there's winter stuff too.
Yeah, it has a like winter setting, it's like a polar fantasy-esque book, like Rumpelstiltskin retelling.
Ooh.
I got Sarah excited.
I'm really excited.
Ooh.
I have high hopes because her last book I read has like a very fairy tale-esque writing style to it. And
I
with
want this
the,
to be your book.
I want this to be my book too. I have too high of hopes for it though, I think.
You know, she wrote a hugely long, my husband was reading them, not trilogy, a long series with
Temeraire?
dragons.
Temeraire.
I don't know. I just know there's dragons. What's
Yeah,
it called?
it's the Temeraire series. It's like the Napoleonic Wars with dragons.
Interesting. Like,
Yeah.
I remember listening to an audiobook. He's like, they have accents and can talk. What is this? But
I've
yeah,
never
like,
read it, but...
so Naomi Novik has written a lot of books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's got skill.
And you know what? There are, should I say it on the live? I don't know. But
You're in conversation.
You gotta say it now. I
Yeah,
mean,
no.
I'm not in conversations currently, but if Sylvia Moreno Garcia or any of the other authors would like to join, that would be great. But I think I would absolutely lose my mind if I like got to talk to Sylvia Moreno Garcia. So
yeah, you might die a little bit. I would die if Naomi Novik came on. I'm like, oh.
There's no way.
She's won so many awards. Like, she's so good. And like, yeah,
it's been really cool talking to the authors.
It's been really cool. And Sarah, is it you who's been approaching agents?
Yes.
So how do you do that? I'm just sort of curiosity. Like,
just do it.
They're just like,
no, I just do it.
So, like, in the book,
get what you want.
In the book, they reference who the agent is, and then you just find their information online and get in touch.
I just sort of like look online and see if there's a way to contact them, and sometimes they're represented by agents who I talk to, and then I try to set it up and try to basically just ask if they have time to do a little Q&A. And I think that it probably is a cool experience to be able to like discuss the books with readers.
Yeah, and I think like it I don't know. I hope it's fun for them to talk to, like, you know, it's a little bit different than if you're giving a professional interview, or like for people who are just sort of like geeking out about the book. Like, you know, that must be a little bit fun. Like talking to Angela.
I hope it is super uncomfortable. I felt that, but I like sometimes couldn't explain my emotion, like how I was trying to say it. I'm like, I hope I wasn't weird.
That was fun. I'm sure you loved it.
I'm sorry. I was just like, but what else can you say? Like I said, like what'd you say?
Oh, the comment.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, what else can you say? Like I said, how rare is it to get to tell someone like thank you and how much you appreciate their work, or like what they did? Because as I said, like this stuff lives with you. Like I'm probably gonna reread this multiple times. Not to mention I think about it often, and I'm just like, wow, that's such a cool place. So yeah, I hope that was fun and not awkward.
No, I think it was great.
I think it was
I'm heading out. Night, everyone.
I do think that it was I think that it was a very like kind of cute experience. I think that would be, I don't know if I don't want to talk for anyone, but I think that if I were to write something and others enjoyed it, I think that would be such a nice thing. Yeah.
Well, and she asked too. I mean, she wanted to know. She's like, did you enjoy it? Like, that's what I want to know. Yeah. So obviously she wanted you to say your thoughts on it. Yeah.
I don't even, I mean, Sarah, you might, if you ever talk to Sylvia Moreno Garcia, no, I don't know what you would say. You'd be like, Mexican Gothic is my favorite. Oh my God.
I will say that for our next show with Zoraida, there is something in here that I just need to ask. And
exciting.
And I don't know. I was buzzing about it at work. I was saying to people, I was like, "Have you heard of this?" It's like a medical sort of thing that they talk about in this book, and I was just like to the pathology scientists, I was like, "Have you heard of this? I've never heard of this. Have you heard of this?" And it's a thing, and I just want to tell her that like it like blew my mind that
That's amazing.
there's this thing in the book, and like thinking that I'll be able to like ask her about it, I'm so excited about. And I just think it'll be like a really cool experience. Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh,
But
great.
I mean, I'll probably preface it by like, this is what I do for a living. So like, if this is a very strange question, that's why.
That's
So
neat.
yeah.
Okay, I better go too. I have homework.
Yeah.
So. Okay, bye guys.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.